Good morning. I don't feel very good. I'm not feeling great. Take pity on me in the comments. Yesterday, I got uh, vaccinated for COVID and the flu, and people tell you you shouldn't get both at the same time, but it's I'm busy here. I don't got time to get one vaccination and then come back a week later. Just put them both in my arm, doc. And that's what happened. And now I don't feel very well. My muscles ache and I kind of have a headache and like my neck is all tense and it's just whoa. Additionally, I have a fun new thing about me, which is I have to get my vaccinations lying down. So this is something that has escalated over time. We'll get to the books today. So today we're going to be talking about Cut to the Feeling by M.A. Wardell and A.J. Truman and The Da Vinci Code, a book from 22 years ago. But first, my many ailments. The first time I ever passed out in a hospital situation, I was 18 years old and my mother thought that I had had a heart attack. In actuality, I had been lifting heavy bags of mulch and I had clearly just like kind of pulled something in my chest and it went away by itself. But my mom decided we need to go to the emergency room and they need to like see if you've had some kind of cardiac event because I've seen all these stories on the news about teenagers playing football and they fall down dead because of the heart conditions. So we go to the hospital and they take a look at me and they take one look at me, the like a nurse, someone right at intake, and they're like, he didn't have a heart attack. And my mom, being my mom, was like, yes, but you have to check. We need blood work. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I was like, okay, fine. But I had had a lot of blood work done when I was a baby, but I don't remember that because I was a baby. And then I don't recall having blood draws in my childhood or teens. Perhaps I did, and it just never, I don't know, I don't remember. But there at 18, almost 19, I think, because I was old. I wasn't old in all through school. I was like on the older side because I had an August birthday and I did two rounds of pre-K because I needed a little bit more time to cook. So I think I was almost 19 in the emergency room with just like a little bit of pain in my chest from lugging mulch. And they take me to a little a bed on the the I guess like nowadays we call it an emergency department floor, and a brand new nurse. It was like her first week. Comes and sticks me in my arm to get some blood out of me. That's how they get it out of you. And I it like nothing had ever happened before, so I was just like, oh, this is something I'm getting a little like just talking about it and thinking about it. So I'm like, oh, this is something. And then I'm like, I don't feel so good. Uh-oh. And then it all goes dark. Some time had passed in the intervening moments. For me, I had time traveled. I had time traveled several minutes into the future, but everyone else had to deal with the consequences. So I was in, like a bed up like this, and I passed out from this event. The nurse didn't know what to do. She like accidentally ripped the thing out of my arm. So blood started just like going everywhere, like spraying out of me. My father was there. My parents are divorced, but he was there because I think it was like end of high school kind of thing. He was like freaking out. He probably like they're lucky they didn't have two babies passing out on the emergency room floor. The nurse couldn't figure out how to get the bed down, right? It's like if you pass out, you want to get like your head lowered and like below like lower than your feet so the blood can go back into your head. But she couldn't figure out how to like get the bed to go down because she was like brand new. My mom has worked in hospitals for decades, and she like rushed in to be like, no, I know what to do. So she's like fighting with the bed to try to get it down. The nurse like hits a button or says a thing so people think there's a code, so they bring a crash cart over, but the crash cart had been in use, so it was like plugged in, so whoever pulled the crash cart pulled the cart, but the like actual machine on top stayed like plugged into the wall, so everything went flying everywhere. It was a mess. And like me, I don't remember any of that because I was unconscious. So I come to many minutes later after all of this chaos has occurred, And I now have an IV line in, and they're monitoring me, and they're like, "You need to stay in the hospital for a couple hours, so we know that you're going to be okay." And that is when I discovered that I have some form of vasovagal syncope. I have like a reaction to certain, like injection related stresses. And this is escalated over time. After that event, now like dental things kind of get me going. I've passed out at the dentist's office several times, and I cannot get blood drawn without being. When I was not in a committed long-term relationship, I had need to get my blood drawn fairly regularly, if you know why. And when that when I entered that phase of my life, I thought like, well, surely that was like a childhood thing, and being a big slut who's sleeping with lots of people, I am leaving behind those childhood things. So I went to get my blood drawn the first time. Like as an adult who wants to get regular STI tests, and I was in one of those chairs where they have you. It's like a big padded arm right in front of you where you lay your arm down, and just like slipped right out of the chair onto the ground. And then the guy there gave me a talking to, like, you need to tell people that you have this thing, because we can like take you to a little back room and lie you down, and that's how I get my blood drawn now. And I thought that was the extent of it. But last year, when I got a COVID and a flu vaccine, I got it in a grocery store, at a grocery store pharmacy, and I was sitting, they have like chairs like right out like across from, the Kleenex and the meat. um uh why this is going on for a while, but we're almost there. I was sitting in a chair, they stuck me, and I was like, oh no, it's happening. And I was I was like trying to tell this like tech, this pharmacy tech, about like what was happening. I'm like, oh, and then it's like boo, and woke up on the ground. The pharmacists had come around, they're like, what happened to you? And I'm like, I've got this thing and I didn't realize it was also for shots now. So this year, I scheduled my vaccinations at my doctor's office, and the very nice lady, took me back to the room, and I was like, "Can I lie down?" And she was like, "You're not getting a blood draw." And I'm like, "I know, but I have this thing." And then she was just like, "Oh, honey, yes, of course, you can lie down." So she let me lie down while she stuck me, and she was very good, very fast. And then, she like got me back up, and she's like, "Oh, honey, I think you need a juice." And I said, "You know what? I think I need a juice too." So I got a COVID vaccination, a flu vaccination, and an apple juice yesterday. And today I feel like crap. Happy Tuesday. Let's talk about books now. So I'm going to start this off with a notice. If you are M.A. Wardell or A.J. Truman, you should skip this, because you should skip all reviews of your books, but more particularly because I have some critical things to say about this book. I didn't particularly like it, and I kind of want to unpack why it didn't work for me. I am going to briefly describe the setup of the book, and I think that like some people will particularly like it. So I'm not saying like, oh, it's a bad book and no one should read it, but I think I will be spending more time about issues with the book that I had and why it didn't work for me. And it's kind of making me think of issues that I have like with the larger romance scene. And then, as a treat, or the opposite, we will talk about the Da Vinci Code. This one, it could be a long one today. I don't know why on a day when I'm not feeling very well, I decided to do a really long coffee chat, but, let's get into it. Okay, Cut to the Feeling is the second book in the, I think it's called like Big Boys, Small Spaces series, something like that, that M.A. Wardell and A.J. Truman have. The first book is Marshmallow Mountain, which I didn't read. I pre-ordered it. I'm a big fan of Matt Wardell, and I read all of his books, and I buy them to support him. Not a big fan of A.J. Truman. I read one of his books and I didn't really care for it. Nothing against him personally. I think I read like, I don't know, maybe the whole first chapter of Marshmallow Mountain, or like a bit of the first chapter. And I was just like, I don't know about this. So I just didn't read it, and I can't really say anything about that. I did read Cut to the Feeling for reasons, and I'm pretty confident in saying that you definitely don't need to read Marshmallow Mountain first. Like, it's just it's a linked series. This is very, very common these days. It's like all different guys' stories, and they all kind of like are sort of related to each other. So there's a building in New York City with very small apartments, and we see the stories of many different queer men who are in that building. And Cut to the Feeling is the story of two of those guys. It is, I assume all of the stories have the forced proximity trope. That's actually it's the name of the series, which I think I'm not exactly getting right, but like big guys or big boys, small spaces, they all have heavier set main characters, and they all have some kind of forced proximity. So I think the first book, the guys are stuck, like snowed in at a cabin. So Cut to the Feeling is kind of forced proximity. That's one issue that I have with it. I think that that's like a bit of a stretch, and it's kind of an opposites attract story, manic pixie dream boy sort of setup. It's very Hallmark. And as far as I know, Marshmallow Mountain is also like very Hallmark romance kind of style on purpose, like a Hallmark rom-com style. The two main characters in Cut to the Feeling are Bryce, who is an aspiring dancer slash actor in New York City. At the beginning of the story, he goes through a breakup. He's been living with his boyfriend, Anthony, I think, in this apartment building in New York City, but he's not on the lease and he's kind of broke, so he's never really been paying for anything there. And it was a kind of a bad breakup, and a little unexpected for him. And where the forced proximity comes into play is the other main character is Emerson, who is a pretty straight-laced classical music aspiring professor, like soon to be professor. He has a PhD and he is starting an adjunct job in New York at University of New York. I don't Is New York University like copywritten? Can you not use NYU or Columbia? I didn't understand why it was University of New York. But he's like the, Bryce is the manic pixie, and Emerson is the guy who's got to like have his worldview updated and changed. And he is subletting the apartment from Anthony, and Anthony didn't tell Bryce that this was happening. And so he just shows up one day in a comic misunderstanding, because after the breakup, Bryce, anyway, I just immediately have criticism for this book. Let's save that. That's the setup. Bryce, and this is where the title of the book, Cut to the Feeling, comes from. Bryce is a huge pop girly stan, and his biggest stanship, the pop artist, the diva that he loves the most, like me, is Carly Rae Jepsen, and that is why I decided, like, well, I'm gonna read this book because it has a lot of Carly Rae Jepsen references in it. And like that's obviously like a big bone of contention between these two guys, that Bryce is big into Carly Rae and Emerson is like, oh no, we need to listen to Wagner. And the story puts them into the close contact, forced proximity, and we see as love blooms. If you are into Hallmark rom-coms, like heightened, bigger than life kind of setups, if you are looking for that kind of sort of like popcorn, turn off your brain, have a good time for 250 pages kind of book, and you want to see like bigger guys and the tropes of this book, I think it's fine. I think it is like pretty readable. I read it very quickly. It's also quite short, and that's another thing that I'm going to like kind of complain about a little bit. But like, I think you could read it very quickly. You definitely don't have to read the first one if you didn't read the first one. And it's like, I think at worst you'll have a decent time, and at best maybe you will like it a lot. So I think like I've gotten away from doing star ratings. I need to leave some kind of short review of this on Goodreads, but I have this new policy. Like if it wasn't a 5-star book, I'm just not leaving any stars on it, and this is definitely not going to be a 5-star book for me. But like describing the setup, and it's a quick read, it's easy reading, like that might be, solid 3 or slightly higher star territory, and sometimes that's what people are looking for. So that might be what you are looking for. I have come to really appreciate M.A. Wardell's writing for kind of I hate to put it this way, but like elevating those kinds of setups a little bit by exploring more of the like bringing a little bit more depth to the table for characters and situations while still maintaining rom-com-y type setups and having a lot of comedy. And I think that that was tremendously missing from this book. It really is just the surface level of those setups, and that's maybe like the first place where I want to start with some criticism of this and how it's kind of making me feel about romance in general these days, which is this really feels like it was a book that was constructed out of tropes first and then it was written. Like we gotta have the forced proximity, so they're gonna be moving, in this apartment with each other. We got the big guys. We got the Carly Rae stuff. It feels like there was a beat sheet of everything that's going to happen in the book, and then the two authors just sort of extended those a little bit, and that was the book. And I think that intersects with the length of the book, which I thought it was like way too short. So these guys get put into forced proximity, and immediately it's not believable. The story is not believable. You do have to turn your brain off for this. Bryce is in this place. He has no, whatever. Maybe he has like squatters' rights or whatever, but he's in this place, and Anthony didn't tell him about this shit at all. Anthony left a note and then did not inform him, like, hey, you need to move out. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why? Like, it's on Anthony to set up the subletting to this guy Emerson. Like, you. If any normal person in that situation would be like, hey, even if it was Anthony seems a little conflict averse, so he just sort of like moves out and leaves a note. But it's like, hey, you are like renting this place to someone. You can't just like assume that it's going to be open and available to them. So like right from the get-go, it was like, oh, well, like this isn't gonna make a lot of sense, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So Emerson shows up. Oh, and I didn't even explain what the like comic setup at the very beginning was because I was going to complain about it. Emerson shows up like off the bus from Indiana, and Bryce is having a sad, and he, orders DoorDash dick. He goes on Grinder, which they call Grinder, but like they can't call NYU. Is that a thing? Emerson shows up, and Bryce thinks it's his Grinder hookup. And there is like comic misunderstanding as Bryce just like plows ahead, pun intended, with what this like hookup is going to be, while Emerson is like, are you the super? And it's like, it's played for laughs. It's I don't think there was enough effort put into like actually setting that scene up to make the comic elements of it land. So it felt like very artificial in a way that I'm like, I'm not really laughing. And like that's where like I'm coming back to, it's like it wasn't long enough. There wasn't enough reality. Like you have to ground those stories a little bit in order to have the comic elements shine through. And I think like that was very absent in this book. So right from the get-go, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. So Emerson is like, well, you got to get out of here. And Bryce is like, no, but like I don't have anywhere to go and I'm broke and like where am I gonna go? So Emerson's like, okay, well, you can stay like one day. And then that just like they basically don't address that. He just stays. And like you can sort of assume that Emerson is, from jump is a little maybe into Bryce. And that's like where things go, but there's not nearly enough time spent on any of that. So the forced proximity setup just like kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to me. In any, like, I know it's not normal, but like in a normal version of this, the person like Emerson would be like, no, seriously, you have to go. And the person like Bryce probably would have availed himself of sleeping on the couch of his friends downstairs, the characters from the previous book. He says like, oh no, but I can't. I have this huge dog. That's like another aspect of this book, is there's this enormous Burmese mountain dog. But like, for real, this person showed up out of nowhere. This has happened to me. I mean, I didn't have a man waiting for me in the apartment, but like I got an apartment in Denver, Colorado, like over the phone basically, because I just like had to move there very quickly, like in a week. And I showed up and the super was like, oh, your apartment isn't ready. And I'm like, but I'm here. And she was like, oh, well, there's another apartment and you can stay there for a couple weeks and then you'll have to move into the other place. It's like we worked something out. It wasn't just like, well, sorry. Like That's not very realistic. It's not credible. And like the note that Anthony leaves breaking up with Bryce is like written in a very like comic kind of way that I'm like, oh, this is like not very. Maybe I should share like the like some lines from it. So okay, Anthony leaves this note. They've been together for several years. The end of the note is, "You're a trooper, Bryce. You'll be fine. You always are. Bobo, that's the dog's name, will take care of you, and you'll get your big break anytime now. Definitely, probably, maybe." Give Bobo a kiss from me. Later, Anthony. Like, obviously we're meant to be like, oh, fuck Anthony, and yeah, like, fuck that guy. But it's like, it's, I can feel the author's like, just like, oh, this is a funny thing, not like it makes sense and it's a funny thing. And I think that's a critical thing here, where like, it's not like a Fantasia on like Carly Rae themes. It's fairly realistic throughout its portrayal of these characters. It's just it has that hallmarky rom-com kind of vibe to it, but like it's just missing enough like fat. Like there needs to be more there. And that's the other big problem with this. It's 250 pages and it's like things happen way too quickly. It felt to me like, wow, like things are moving insanely fast. And then at the end of the book, there's a time jump. Like maybe like very light spoilers here, but you know, it's a romance. You know, these guys get together. The epilogue is 8 months later and they're living with each other, and one of them is reflecting on everything that's happened, and they're like, 8 months ago we were just starting our like lives with each other, which is indicating another passage of time. There's another time jump right before the epilogue, which is 3 months. Bryce, the dancer character, he goes in a reality TV show competition in Los Angeles for 3 months. So they're reflecting at the end of the book that a year has passed, and we know from the epilogue like that it's been 8 months. So and we know that uh, LA time jump was 3 months. So 8 plus 3 is 11. That means the entire course of the book takes place over just 4 weeks. Everything happens in 4 weeks. So something that I was thinking about in this book is I think that it's too inspired by actual rom-coms, which are like usually 90 to 100 minutes. But I think you can just do different things with film than you can with a book. So the thing that occurred to me is that if you are going to have like not necessarily insta love, but if you're gonna have the romance story take place over a short period of time, you need more pages. You actually can get away with a shorter book if it takes place over a longer period of time, because you can have time jumps in the book and like kind of deal with things that happened in the time jump that makes it you can move the plot and the love story forward just through brief exposition in a way that you can't if it's actually taking place over a shorter period of time. Because it's taking place over such a short period of time, we see most of the things that happen with those guys in those 4 weeks. And it's just not enough time for like things to have actually happened. Like it felt like a lot of the conflict would get sort of like set up in one chapter and dealt with in the next chapter, and then we move on to the next thing. There just wasn't enough like it needed like filler. It needed to be more like 300 or 350 pages and maybe take place over a slightly longer period of time, like 6 weeks or 8 weeks. But I think you could do this same setup and just have more interiority with these characters, more time with these characters. It just like Emerson he goes from I arrived here and why is this strange man living in my apartment to I live with this strange man in like 2 days. And that doesn't pass the smell test for me. And that like really held back my enjoyment for this book. The final thing, and this is like a big spoiler for the end of the book, I was like, there is a lot of Carly Rae Jepsen worked through the plot. And there is like a meta thing and a specific thing about Carly Rae that I'm going to complain about now. As you would probably expect, Emerson, who is like a music professor who's into the classics, he gets his brain adjusted by Bryce, where he comes to understand that pop music is just as important as classical music. Like that's part of his arc. And he brings Carly Rae Jepsen into the classroom, and that's part of his, he's trying to get a tenure track position at University of New York. And that is all very helpful for that. But they kind of this is a this is a book whose title is a Carly Rae Jepsen song title, and it kind of leaves the Carly Rae stuff behind about 2/3 of the way through the book. After Emerson like kind of has those changes, we just deal with the kind of end game of these guys' relationships. Like if you're gonna play the Carly Rae Jepsen thing, it should have been more important toward the end of the book. So like a big thing is Emerson has to do not a test, but he has to do like an interview for his tenure track position. And Carly Rae Jepsen has nothing to do with it. It is just purely focused on Bryce is kind of like unexpectedly helpful to Emerson in his career by getting him to think about it like an audition process, and that's what is it's those things that are how these two guys are collaborating with each other toward the end of the book. But Carly Rae Jepsen has nothing to do with it. Emerson even starts writing a paper or something about the relationships between modern music like Carly Rae Jepsen and classical music. That has nothing to do toward the end of the book. So it just feels like that needed to be a bigger part of the climax of the book if it was a book that's kind of a lot about Carly Rae Jepsen. And then so that's the broader thing. The more specific thing is like the final chapter and the final lines of the book have no Carly Rae Jepsen stuff in it at all. They are getting ready to. I just scanned through the final chapter. They're going to the opera, which is something like I do like that. Bryce thinks like, oh, I'm not going to like the opera, and Emerson convinces him to go earlier in the book, and Bryce has like a very emotional moment at the opera wherein he kind of comes to understand that it's as good as pop music. Like I like the ideas of the book. I just think that they weren't executed particularly well. So at the end, they're going to the opera again, and that's just it. It's the deciding to they don't. There's no marriage proposal in the book, but there is like a cutesy, like, oh, Bryce Erickson, will you co-sign this lease with me? Is the big moment in the epilogue, and I did like that. I think that that's cute. But there's no Carly Rae at all. They're not like they don't have Carly Rae playing while they're getting ready to go to the opera. And the final lines of the book, like you could have stolen a Carly Rae song title. I know that authors try to avoid having specific lyrics in their book because lyrics are copywritten and they don't want to like get dinged for that or have to try to like work out the licensing on that. But like you could have found a Carly Rae Jepsen song that was relevant and had it playing in the last chapter. I just thought it was like baffling that it's a book that's all about Carly Rae. It doesn't end with any Carly Rae. Strange. So for me, not a really great book. I think if you're gonna like this book, I think it would be a solid 3 or 3.5 star book for you. For me, it's less. I'm not gonna say like what exactly. I didn't hate the book, and like I said, it's very readable. I didn't have a bad time reading the book, but I didn't have a great time reading the book. And it's like, oh no, like, but I love Carly Rae Jepsen, and that made me feel even worse. That this thing that I love, this woman who means so much to me. I've been to so many of her concerts, and I'm not in love with a book that's so centered around her. And that made me feel bad. That made me feel almost as bad as getting the COVID and the flu vaccinations. All right, now let's talk about the Da Vinci Code for some reason. We've been together for a while today. I will try not to spend too much time on this. I have, and like a quick update on the like main purpose of this channel. I finished Prince's Gambit last week, and I have moved on to King's Rising. Captive Prince will take however long it's going to take. I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. And then once I'm past that, I'm going to have to like think about how I'm going to manage projects like that, because like that got like totally away from me. But like one of the reasons why it got away from me is that my work just like shot up in intensity, and I just really didn't have a desire to be like kind of reading for work. And when I did like the Rachel Reed stuff or Saint, That's reading for work. So that's one of the main reasons why I have been avoiding Captive Prince is that I'm not reading it because I want to read it. I'm reading it because I am doing this project for this channel. And it's like after I work 10 hours or 11 hours in a day and I'm working 7 days a week, kind of the last thing I want to do at the end of the day is also do something that feels like work. And so I have been reading other things, which has been tearing me away from Captive Prince as well. So like I read Rosemary and Rue by Shauna McGuire, which I read a few years ago and I reread now, and I'm reading the second book. And I also decided to reread The Da Vinci Code, which I read when it came out, and I have some thoughts about. I have some thoughts about it. I'm also currently reading Angels and Demons, and like my big takeaway for these books is that they're not very good. They're not very good. Oh yeah, but they are very readable. Not, I guess maybe that's the theme. Not great, but readable. So I read the Da Vinci Code. I think I told the story before. I read the Da Vinci Code on the first plane ride I ever took from Columbus, Ohio, to Portland, Oregon, in 2003 when the book came out, and I read it like while I was flying. I don't think I could read a whole book in one kind of go anymore unless it was very short. I had a very different approach to reading when I was whatever. How old was I in 2003? 16? 20 years will do a number on you, let me tell you. Anyway, read the book and I remember enjoying it. And I was looking up some things about it recently, and I enjoyed it in the same way as this person who started a thread about it in like the thrillers subreddit on Reddit. Someone said, this was the first thriller I've ever read, and the bar is set high. I really enjoyed this book. And the first, or like the top rated comment is, you should read some more thrillers. It's rereading it now. I noticed when I set up my Goodreads, I went through and I left star ratings on a bunch of books that I had read in the past, and The Da Vinci Code is one of them. And I gave it 2 stars. That feels pretty close to right. I think I was maybe a little uncharitable. It's probably more like a 2.5 star book. It is compulsively readable, and something that I was thinking about it is it's almost like the last book of one era and the first book of another era, and the new era that it's going into in 2003 is the like low attention span era. I know that there were plenty of books from before then that have like short chapters with a cliffhanger at the end of every chapter, but this just like the Da Vinci Code is, the copy of it that I have here is what, like 450 pages, and it has how many chapters? 107 chapters. It's a lot of chapters. Some chapters are literally 1 page long. It takes place over one, like this is something, and it seems like Brown is doing this in Angels and Demons as well. It takes place over essentially one 24-hour period, like the television show 24. It just is very propulsive in the storytelling, like things just like keep happening, but like Brown is like, he got a lot of criticism from more, like literary reviewers for being like a bad like prose author. And I see what people are saying. Like he doesn't have a way with words, but he doesn't have a way with words in a way that just makes it even more readable, I think. It's just very consumable. The language of the books feels like it's just meant to to get you where you're going. It's not like, it doesn't seem like he cares very much about the words themselves. And it's kind of the opposite of what I generally like. Like I've talked multiple times recently about Katie Casey's breakout year and others of their works. And something that I really like and appreciate about Casey is how much you can tell that they cared about the language that they're using and the words that they're using, that they kind of sweated a lot of the sentences. That's not a feeling you get when you're reading Dan Brown. The plot also is like very predictable. And I mean, I know I've read it before, but it was a long time ago and I never saw the movie. But like you can tell what's gonna happen in a way that like it makes you feel smart. You feel smart for knowing what's going to happen, and that can like certainly gives you a good feeling about the book. Like it's essentially talking down to its audience, but it's talking down to its audience in a way that that if you're not a super smart person, you might feel like it's talking up to you, which is unfortunate. I think the the main thing that's on my mind is like the degree to which these books feel like just pervy old man writing. So There is a significant quasi-romantic element in the Da Vinci Code where Robert Langdon kind of has a thing for Sophie Neveu, and he's like in his 40s Harvard professor, and she's like a hot young thing on the Paris police, a cryptographer for the Paris police. That's the other thing, is like everything is fucking unbelievable. Oh, and speaking of unbelievable, to read and appreciate the Da Vinci Code, you have to accept that it exists in an alternate universe where many things from to like our world exist in it, but they mean different things. Because like all of the like history in the book, which Dan Brown like swore up and down at the time, and even includes like in the book, like these are facts. It's like, well, that's not true at all. And I don't know the degree to which the Da Vinci Code like inspired many of the like misunderstandings and like conspiracy theories that people like Dan McClellan fight back about every day on the internet. But it certainly didn't help. Like it was kind of surfacing a lot of things that were already like very popular in the 90s, like conspiracy theories that were really popular, like kind of new agey kinds of stuff. But I mean, like it being as popular as it was certainly didn't help. I mean, like also the History Channel and Ancient Aliens didn't help, but whatever. This feels about the same level as like Ancient Aliens, the understanding of Christianity. It's like it gets wrong what everybody gets wrong about, like, oh, the Council of Nicaea like decided what the Bible was going to be, but there's tons of other stuff that's totally like wrong about it. Anyway, Angels and Demons is even worse because it's written a few years prior. There's like one, so like it really feels like a book written by a horny old man. And there was one section in Angels and Demons that I just wanted to read where I'm like, holy shit. There's basically like a Bond girl in all of these books. Like Robert Langdon gets a Bond girl, and in this one, it's what's her name? I've already forgot. Vetra, like Leonardo? No, no, no. It's Leonardo Vetra is the guy who gets killed. The priest who gets killed, and his adopted daughter is Vittoria Vetra. And when Vetra shows up, it's so ridiculous. Oh my god. Okay, so Vittoria Vetra is a bioentanglement physicist, and she gets brought back to CERN in Switzerland because her father was murdered, and she like comes back like in her like scuba gear or whatever on a helicopter. And then here is Langdon slash Brown, because it's like an omniscient third person narrator, like remarking on Victoria's physical appearance when he first sees her. Descending from the chopper in her khaki shorts and white sleeveless top, Vittoria Vetra looked nothing like the bookish physicist he had expected. Lithe and graceful, she was tall, with chestnut skin and long black hair that swirled in the back wind of the rotors. Her face was unmistakably Italian, not overly beautiful, but possessing full, earthy features that even at 20 yards seemed to exude a raw sensuality. She's not like the other girls. As the air currents buffeted her body, her clothes clung, accentuating her slender torso and small breasts. See, like, Robert Langdon is, a gentleman. He doesn't mind that she has small breasts. Ms. Vetra is a woman of tremendous personal strength, Kohler, the director of CERN, said, seeming to sense Langdon's captivation. She spends months at a time working in dangerous ecological systems. She's a strict vegetarian and CERN's resident guru of Hatha Yoga. God, this is so fun. Hatha Yoga, Langdon mused. The ancient Buddhist art of meditative stretching seemed an odd proficiency for the physicist's daughter of a Catholic priest. Langdon watched Vittoria approach. She had obviously been crying, her deep sable eyes filled with Jesus Christ. Her deep sable eyes filled with emotions Langdon could not place. Still, she moved toward them with fire and command. Her limbs were strong and toned, radiating the healthy luminance of Mediterranean flesh that enjoyed long hours in the sun. God. Horny, pervy old man, but I'm still reading it. Because I'm sick, remember? Like, I don't feel good. And I'm stressed as fuck. Like, I'm working like a huge amount of hours, and I just want things that I can like kind of turn my brain off a little bit, which is, you think that I would have like cut to the feeling more, but it didn't let me turn my brain off. Let me turn my brain off. You have to do the work to let the audience turn their brain off. If you are just like trope, like scene, nothing connecting them, no thought about the characters, like, some people are gonna like that, but I didn't like that. And then Dan Brown is a pervy old man, but I'm gonna keep reading these books, I guess. And I'm gonna keep reading the Seanan McGuire books. Maybe I'll talk about those in a different way on TikTok like I used to in the olden days. Why not give myself more work? Anyway, I am going to finish this cup of coffee and maybe go back to bed because I'm feeling some chills. Probably the vaccines, the microchips doing their work. Speaking of conspiracies, I hope that you all have gotten vaccinated if you can for various things, so that you are safe this season, and I hope you all don't pass out when you get vaccinated. It's not a fun time. Happy Tuesday.